Hi everybody, and thank you for joining me again. I'd like to dedicate this Devar Torah for the Refuah Shalama of Eric Yitzchak ben Miriam, Chava Freidel Batizita Malka, Shimon Harav Shimon ben Sarah, and Harafeh Shemuel Yosef ben Rachel. And in the merits of all our Chayalim and Chayalot, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should keep them all safe and sound and protect them all. This week's parasha is Parashat Emor, and this begins with the special laws pertaining to the Kohanim, the priests. It also talks about what animals may or may not be slaughtered as an offering and provides a list of the various festivals of the Jewish calendar, including Shabbat. Now, there's a lot to discuss here, but I thought to make a little bit of a difference. This Friday is Pesach Sheni, and I thought it would be nice to discuss this often passed over or overlooked day. So by way of background, Pesach Sheni, what is Pesach Sheni? So Pesach Sheni is not mentioned here, actually. It's not mentioned in this week's parasha. It's actually mentioned, excuse me, in the parasha of Bahalotcha, in the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. Now we're told there that Moshe was approached by people who were unable to bring Korban Pesach on time. Why? Because they'd been impure as a result of being in contact with a dead body. However, they didn't want to miss out on the mitzvah. And so they approached Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe asks Hashem. Hashem instructs Moshe that they can bring the sacrifice a month later, on Pesach Sheni. Hashem institutes this mitzvah for people who are impure through contact with a corpse, or those who are, quote, on a distant road. We're told that this means a spiritual distance, and not necessarily a geographic distance. Whether that distance is through lack of knowledge or the feeling of alienation, they're just distant. Pesach Sheni teaches that whatever the reason for the distance, physical or otherwise, there's always a possibility of coming back. Everyone's always welcome back. Pesach is unique in that it's the only time-bound mitzvah that one can make up for it later. And this, of course, is doubly strange, right? Because as we've spoken about before, Pesach is so linked in with time. We spoke about this at Pesach, so linked in time that it's strange that for a festival that is linked in with time, you can make up for it. Not that you don't have to do it on time, but that you can make up for it at a different time. And it's the only one that you can do that with. So Pesach Sheni overrides the original time, let's say. This highlights beautifully that it is never too late to rectify a past failing. Even if a person has failed to do something because they've been contaminated by death, i.e. they're disconnected with their spirituality, or their spiritual path, or on a distant road from his people and from God, there's always a Pesach Sheni that comes along them that allows them to make good on what they missed out on. So Pesach Sheni represents the power of Teshuvah, of coming back, of going back in time, of redefining the past, of turning our negative experiences into positive ones. Pesach Sheni is unique in another way. Virtually all the mitzvot of the Torah were commanded unilaterally by God, by Hashem, to Moshe Rabbeinu. Pesach Sheni, however, was instituted in response to a petition from the people who didn't want to be deprived of bringing a Korban Pesach. Now, there's some major differences between Pesach observed by people, so to speak, on the path, what we would now call on the derech, and Pesach Sheni, established for what we would now call the Baal Teshuvah, the returnee, the person coming back, which reflects a deeper spiritual significance of the two. Now, one of the primary differences between them is that Korban Pesach, brought on 14th Nisan, is followed by a 7-day festival, as we know. Well, Pesach Sheni is only one day. Now, as we know, the number 7 signifies the number of the natural world. I'm sure we've mentioned this before. There are 7 colors of the rainbow. There are 7 notes of the musical scale. There are 7 days in the week. The natural world is represented by the number 7. So the 7 days of Pesach represents the natural step-by-step progression for those already on the path, on the derech. However, for the returnee, the Baal Teshuvah, the essence of Teshuvah boils down to a single flash of regret, of resolve, and then inspiration. Most people must strive to acquire their place in Olam Haba, in the next world. Others can achieve it in a single flash, in a single moment that molds their entire future and redefines their paths. The one-day duration of Pesach Sheni reflects the nature of Teshuvah, the drastic overnight leap, this flash of inspiration. Another halachic difference between the two Pesachs, of course, is the prohibition against chametz. The first Pesach, as we know, wages out an all-out war on chametz. We get rid of every single speck of chametz. We drive ourselves crazy. Not so for Pesach Sheni. Although the Korban Pesach on Pesach Sheni is eaten with matzah, there is no obligation to get rid of chametz. Chametz, as we mentioned before Pesach, is dough which has risen, representing the tendency of the human ego to swell up. So, in the same way as we get rid of all the chametz, we get rid of our inflated egos on the basis of en od milvado. There is no one other than him, meaning him. So, whilst for the average Jew, chametz representing ego provides a very difficult obstacle that we must get rid of, the Ritani, the person coming back, has less of a problem in this area. He exploits these negative elements, these negative experiences, to fuel his quest for spiritual life. He has room for chametz and matzah. In fact, if we look at it obviously, the story behind Pesach Sheni is a classic example of this. A group of people approach Moshe Rabbeinu saying, why should we be deprived of this mitzvah? Now these words, why should we be, normally indicate a very selfish attitude. Me. It's about me. But in this case, there was no selfish complaints. It wasn't about a selfish attitude, but a desire to give and serve. It wasn't about why am I being deprived. It's why am I not being allowed to serve? I want to serve. And so Pesach Sheni doesn't represent, you don't need this whole aspect of getting rid of chametz, of getting rid of the self-inflated ego. You don't need to banish chametz from the home. The risen ego has been turned into something positive. This why should I be deprived, has already been changed and converted into I want to serve. It's not about me. It's about I want to serve. Now there seems to be no coincidence that Pesach Sheni, the festival that epitomizes this act of voluntary return and subjugation of ego, falls right in the middle of the Omer, the time, as we've spoken about before, the time in which we are growing spiritually and we're striving to perfect ourselves in preparation for our encounter at Sinai on Shavuot. As we've been talking about the last few weeks and the last few parashiot, how do we come closer? How do we become holy, as we spoke about last week? For the main part, as we've seen, we're talking about mitzvot ben adam lechavero, interpersonal laws between man and man. We've said this in the last few weeks. We subjugate the ego. We think about our fellow human being. We don't judge them. We respect them. We pay them on time. We do all of this and behave correctly, but towards our fellow human being, but mainly because God told us to do so. And here we learn yet again that becoming holy is not detaching ourselves from people and the material, but quite the contrary. The holiest thing that we can do is love our fellow human being. Shabbat Shalom from the Kol Megadim team.